And we're live with Interchain Live. This is Ryan Munn. Thank you for joining us today. We have TokenIQ talking about their applications of blockchain technology and tokenization. We've got Alex, the CEO of TokenIQ. We've also got Ben Wilkening and, oh no, I'm going to butcher your name, aren't I? Phil?
Silicano.
All right, awesome. Great to have you guys on here. Really appreciate it. Really excited about sharing your project, as we've talked about it for a while now. We met down in Boston a while back, and I think that you guys have a great set of tools, and I'd love to explore that. But first, let's start with you, Alex. Just share with the audience a little bit, kind of your background, what brought you to where you are with TokenIQ today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for having us. First and foremost, just wanted to say that I am a president, not a CEO. We have a better looking CEO than me, but with all being said.
Thanks for the correction.
No worries there. But with all that being said, again, thank you for having us. My name is Alexander Dio, and professionally by trade, I'm a registered investment advisor. And I'm presently also running my wealth management and insurance brokerage practice. And anything related to financial services and or capital markets is near and dear to me. So TokenIQ has immediate application of things that if I wear my registered advisory hat, need in the space of capital markets, precisely to streamline the onboarding process of investors, relationship management, reporting, and of course with this new technology that everybody is somewhat raving about and or maybe misunderstanding sometimes about blockchain and distributed ledger technology, to bring forward the asset tokenization aspect of how securities can be categorized, tokenized, fractionalized, and effectively the old-fashioned paper of legacy system can be replaced with digital forms of assets and the ownership on the ledger directly. So whether it would be accomplished through the blockchain or distributed ledger, either or, I think we are seeing a new dynamic and the shift in the capital markets, in financial services, where everything that's been known for us since 1930s, ever since securities been around or the laws been instituted, now we are in 2019. So fast forward, it definitely requires a modernization of the system. And I think that's what effectively TokenIQ brings to the market, because we marry two concepts where traditional technology based on a software, so we are essentially software as a service solution, coupled with asset tokenization that is brought by distributed ledger technology, allowing this perfect match between what is existed in the capital markets and what is about to happen. So TokenIQ is creating the bridge between the legacy financial services and the future of the financial services, how it could be. Does it make sense? Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's really exciting what you guys are doing. I can't wait to dig in a little bit more and explore what you guys have accomplished. It sounds like you've really pulled your financial background into this. How did you really get into TokenIQ? Was it meeting the co-founders, or did you go looking for them when you heard about them? How did that relationship begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I know that everything in this world happens not for coincidence, but there is a certain plan. And what I was doing professionally, looking into the blockchain space by request of our clients, specifically that the pool of investors wanted to get their hands around Bitcoin, Ethereum, and anything related to the cryptocurrency about a couple of years ago. So right around 2000, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I started doing my personal research on behalf of our clients. and quickly now got myself into the ICO craze and anything related to the ICO. Fast forward, I quickly realized that, wow, this is very interesting in a way that investors are engaging with the issuers, but at the same time, there is no tangible compliance in place to facilitate this particular transactions, because to me, everything seemed to be as a securities. But yet a lot of people were running around saying, no, 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 this is a new type of investment, or this is something different. Well,
not so different. A
not
token is a
so
token is a
different.
token.
Yeah, and we are exactly experiencing that right now, that SEC had started to send the love letters to the issuer saying, look, you are actually selling unregistered securities, and now the application of a TokenIQ technology is becoming more and more evident. But just to kind of bridge this journey where I started to search for our own behalf of our clients related to the cryptocurrency, then it led me to ICO. Then I started to travel around the world and telling everybody that, look, this is although great, but there's no future for this, because there's somehow has to be an application of a compliance in place, regulated, maybe in a way decentralized, but still regulated properly,
Right.
maybe self-regulated, but there are some governance of observable would have to be existed, right?
Yep.
So fast forward in 2017, end of 2017, I've met with Mark, the co-founder of TokenIQ, and we started to chat. And as a result, we found common grounds. So he was coming from the technology aspect of it, and I was coming from financial background of it. So we have a perfect yin-yang match, where his technology background and my financial background, and we have one common goal: to bring insanity to a sanity of a regulated space of tokens. And we said, you know what? You already have something. I already have something. Why don't we get together and effectively create a platform that would be fully compliant? Mark at that time already filed several patents on a TokenIQ, and I have joined as a co-founder of a TokenIQ to simply bring now the awareness of what we're doing and taking the idea and converting it to the actual product.
Excellent, excellent. That's amazing. That's amazing. So now you obviously can't do that on your own, or even just with a co-founder. So you've been building a team around you, and we've got. So what are your roles? I'll start with you, Ben. What's your role with TokenIQ?
Yeah, my role at TokenIQ, I came in after the executive team was formed. I came in the summer of last year, right at the front end of the summer, after the story you just heard unfolded with Mark and Alex successfully teaming up and kind of getting the initiative fed the way it needed to truly get off in the right direction. And we needed to get connected to the right folks. We had a successful seed round at that point, and we really needed to make a push for all sorts of different initiatives, conferences, trade shows, getting some key projects put together so we can communicate better with customers, and then of course getting ourselves out there in conversation so we can bring in and attract an orbit of strategic partnerships, most importantly. So that's where my role formed. I'm the director of strategic relationships now, kind of for the Western region, I suppose, because Philip pretty soon thereafter came on about 6 months after I joined to fulfill a role out on the East Coast, because Alex and I had actually done a pretty tremendous job, I think, with getting exposure on a worldwide international scope to garner the interest enough to where we had to have another person to help facilitate communication. So
awesome.
My role kind of continues in a pseudo sales capacity now, where we're expanding. We're now in a new investment round, as I think is public knowledge to some, that we're looking for up to $10 million with. We have a lot of commitments already, and we're going to be running that through the end of next month, whereby our summer focus is then going to focus again to getting this product in people's hands and tokenizing some projects.
Excellent.
But I came by way of this.
Yeah, I was just going to say I want to hear from Philip, and then in a second I want to come back and I want to hear how you and Alex connected, and Philip, share with me your role now as you've come into this team and kind of what your take is.
Sure. So just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've been in the capital markets, financial services, consulting side of things for around 15, almost 20 years. I had been covering mostly asset management, asset gathering, asset allocation in the consulting thought leadership space at Cerulli Associates. Then went to IT Group, which does more of a fintech thought leadership consulting. Left there, started my own firm, Lightship, did that for a number of years. And for the last 3-4 years or so, a lot of my clients have been asking us to do white papers, research papers, deep dives into the blockchain space and what blockchain was going to bring to financial technology and to the capital markets, financial services space. So I have been sort of keeping my eye and then kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of the blockchain DLT developments in fintech. And I happened to bump into a friend of mine, a colleague of mine at a conference in Boston at TokenFest. And he mentioned, oh, I have a couple of great guys you should meet and come have some dinner with us. And those two great guys were Alex and Ben. And what was supposed to be sort of a quick 1-hour chit chat over a little snack of sushi turned into about an 8-hour all-night conversation about everything, all the woes and difficulties that the financial services industry and capital markets industry had been facing for about the last 20, 30 years, and the hurdles they were facing with legacy systems and old, outdated protocols and processes, and among other things, everything from the history of money and the history of currency and what is money and where the technology should lead us. And we all just sort of got along. And one thing I want to mention, because as you know, 2017, 2018, there were tons of companies out there that were doing ICOs and all this kind of, I guess, crazy stuff. What I liked about TokenIQ and everybody there is that, and this is what I tell my colleagues, they are the adults in the room. They're all experienced professionals. They all have 10, 15, 20 years experience in their representative industries, whether it's Mark in the technology side, Alex in the capital market side, Ben, both a little bit of both actually. And actually Ben helps us bridge that knowledge gap between the two sides. And to Alex's point, what is different about TokenIQ and the mentality from day one, the sort of philosophy from day one, is that the 33 Act, the 34 Act have been law for about 80-something years. There's no point trying to reinvent it and go around it and circumvent it and hope that the SEC will learn to love us. The SEC doesn't learn to love anybody. I was a lawyer for a period of time with a specialty in securities regulation. I tell people the government moves slow, but when it moves, you don't want to be in its way. It's like a glacier. It moves slow, but you don't want to build your house in front of a glacier. Sooner or later, you're going to get buried. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of those other sort of those get-rich-quick ICOs that were coming out in 17. But what drew me to TokenIQ was the philosophy of let's follow the law. The law is the law. Let's follow the regulations. Let's build a compliant solution from day one. And I thought that was great. And then we had further conversations, and here I am. So,
awesome. Well, it sounds like you're a great addition to the team, that's for sure. So So one of the things that I like to showcase is really that whole team process, the people behind the technology. The experience is great, but it's also about how do we connect with the people on the other end of technology, right, and bring it together. And that's really what you guys are doing here. So Alex, just walk me through real quick your experience building this team around TokenIQ with your co-founder, and bringing Ben on, and your experience with that, bringing Phil on, and what that process has been like for you.
Well, it's been an amazing journey, to say the least, because I think in less than 6 months, we went from an idea to a fully executed product. So in 2018 alone, not only that we had an MVP in place, we launched officially our platform during the Crypto Invest Summit in Los Angeles, California Convention Center. We also have onboarded and announced several customers that are at the various stages to utilize our technology. And to be honest, I think everything been happening organically. So, and the combination between myself and the Mark and the distribution of responsibilities worked out beautifully. While I was focusing on the front end of our journey to gauge the audience, attract particular audiences and investors, customers, strategic partners. And as such, I wanted to have talented people around that would be able not only to implement what the vision is, but also add their own flavor. And I certainly believe between Ben and Philip, they both contribute immensely to the success of our organization, because they dynamically different personalities and have different talents. And I think it's another yin and yang on the level of directors of strategic relationships. So having said that, Mark, on the other hand, is taking care of the back end. He is in charge of hiring VP of engineering, hiring all of the engineers in place, doing everything to have our technology to support our efforts to highlight how great we are, not just in words, but in actualities, because he has done it in the past and he continued doing it. And what we do, we collaborate. So we collaborate very effectively with our engineers, with our biz dev people, or relationship managers, if you will, myself, and our team will grow. So the process was very fruitful, where we distributed the responsibilities and allowing ourselves to um, do what we do really good, best in our respectful fields, while we are taking care of one organization.
Awesome, awesome. It sounds like you guys have a great vision as a team in terms of the culture around the company and your mission. That's amazing. So share with me now. Let's talk a little bit about where TokenIQ is today. What are you guys basically hitting the ground with right now? What are you capable of providing to the world?
That's a very good question, and I think a lot of our customers or future customers ask the same question. So, if we're for a moment put a pause or a pin on the tokenization aspect of this whole notion of tokenized securities, and focus a little bit on investor experience when it comes to issuer attempting to reach out to potential investors, onboard those investors, and essentially allowing them to streamline the overall process. So in our platform, we have two separate parts. Part A is exactly that. It's mainly focused on user experience, the onboarding experience, the relationship management through the platform between the issuer and investors, anything related to properly streamlined reportings that are done automatically. So the simplification and the automation on the workflow level, that's what we were focusing on initially. the tokenization comes as a natural progression or the next step of the evolution. But if you think about, I personally experience in the capital markets, and that's what was bothering me from the beginning. The average time we spend to onboard investor takes anywhere from 3 to 4 labor hours of my staff, having a communication between A, the issuer, B, custodian, C, broker dealer, D, with a intermediary, C, the funds that needed to be wired from. And these communications are done in a multiple ways. 1, phone calls, 2, emails, 3, internal CRMs, D, external communications, all of that together just to onboard one investor. And it takes 3 to 4 hours, daunting hours, to go through this process over and over and over again. And if I
A lot of
have,
friction.
exactly, there are a lot of friction points that what we as a TokenIQ attempt to solve right here, right now, that it exists in the capital markets, is exactly streamlining that particular piece. Outside of asset tokenization, securitization, and anything of that nature that is delivered by, as we all know, blockchain, distributed ledger technology. So think about, what if there is a platform outside of tokenization that can basically minimize the time of a investor experience from 3 to 4 hours of a multiple people communicating and multiple ways of communications to be used, down to one centralized portal, and the time of experience is shrinked from 3 to 4 hours of all of these different people communicating with each other to 15 to about 30 minutes of experience, all done, everything in one place.
Yeah.
And while that is done, everybody who is party to this transaction will be properly notified what has happened, whether the fund's been wired in time, whether now the certificate's been issued, the cap table been properly updated, the investors had received the confirmation about their participation, the documents are properly stored in the place of a security.
Now, and not to mention, would I also be correct to assume that you could then use this functioning identity compliance package, which has taken a half hour or whatever to get through instead of 4 hours, but now you also don't need to spend 4 hours in 10 other places. You've already got it set up, so you can transact as in any other platform that decides to be compliant with the particular protocols in place.
You got it. And that's absolutely the goal we have in mind, and a solution that perhaps would be universal to create this ecosystem where the AML KYC process would be so much more streamlined and easy to deal with. And now it brings me to the modernization of the capital markets, where the communications between organizations are so streamlined that all of these friction points are simply not an issue anymore. And if we add additional layer of a tokenization, that brings a different level, or the next level of transparency
Right.
and ease of doing business, simplification, and operational
Well,
structures to be like more robust, right? So
yeah.
now we are talking about a completely different package
Right,
altogether.
right. And one of the things I remember talking with you and with you and Ben about when we met was around this. I tend to call it a farce in how they claim that custody is this big issue, or recovery of assets is a big issue, and it is a big issue of concern, but it's not actually. It's not something that we don't have the tools to address already with multi-signature wallets and creating just well thought out protocols for establishing private key security.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
And you
And
guys provide that essentially built into your technology.
yes, correct. So the cool thing about it is we're very big on the security,
Mm.
in the fact that the entire technology itself operates in a way that we don't have access to PII. We don't have access to the private keys themselves, but yet we are able to recover should the investor had lost it and or have no idea where they stored it. So the replacement process is done very easy if you look on a surface of this, but of course it's a very complex process in the back end. But we make the user experience so appealing to these investors because at the snap of a finger, and of course with the submission of a proper documents, we enable the issuer. By the way, us as TokenIQ, we are not doing it by request from the investors. It has to go through the issuer because we are empowering the issuer to have these features and benefits. And effectively, issuer by confirming and validating the identity of the person who had identified themselves as an investor, but yet lost the private keys, so they can recover that for them.
Right.
And that's a cool feature that I think, in my estimation, or at least knowledge, nobody has come close to this particular feature to be streamlined so well as we do.
To make it so user friendly. Yeah,
user friendly, exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Ben, are you guys allowed to share any demos or back end views, or can you tell us a little bit more about the onboarding and business development side of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, giving our live demo and wowing people is actually part of the key part of our business development efforts right now. Kind of showing people what we've built. And yeah, we have a live demo that we give to people after appropriate information has been exchanged. We don't make it practice, at least right now, to put out like webinar style sign up to see our thing in action.
Right.
It's very kind of white glove service type stuff with the way we're working with our issuers. And we'll have a demo video that we produce for those purposes. So people, that if they really want to see kind of a guided walkthrough, that'll be coming out in the near future with all the redesigned UI and everything, so people can see that. I'll probably even let you know when it's out. It's probably going to be just days away.
Great. Yeah, definitely let us know for sure. In fact, yeah, we'll link to that underneath this video once we have that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Very positive impressions that we have when we actually show people what we've built and just how easy the investor onboarding is made. It's pretty validating to see, no pun intended, to see people that didn't really know that this type of a solution existed until maybe just a few months ago or weeks ago. And then all of a sudden they talk to somebody like TokenIQ, who, lo and behold, not only has conceptualized and theoretically solved for the problems, but actually built the platform to do what they want and execute on a strategy that they really may be very presciently thinking through for themselves. It's very cool. So 2019 is going to be a very, very impactful year for many folks, and TokenIQ is going to be that empowered, enabled vehicle to allow them to achieve it.
Awesome. Now, Phil, you're coming into this most recently, right, out of these guys, and you were most recently in a role sort of in this space, non-blockchain though, right? And so how does this contrast or compare with what you're stepping out to and into?
Correct. I like I said, I was in the consulting side of things, the thought leadership, research, competitive market analysis side of the consulting world, and mostly in the fintech space, the financial technology space, for a number of years. As part of that, a lot of our projects revolved lately in the last 2 or 3 years around distributed ledger technology and how it could be utilized in financial services, capital markets. Making the switch to actually be in the technology side is amazing. It really is. And it's funny, I kind of tell people that I was just a little too young to catch the .com boom and really ride that wave of new technology and excitement and that dynamic time. And when I start seeing the development of blockchain on the horizon a few years ago and realizing how transformative, I mean, truly, truly transformative it will be in the space, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to miss another opportunity again. And so I had begun already sort of talking to a few different companies in the space. And like I said, you know, the guys at TokenIQ, the team at TokenIQ, they're really, really different. They really stand out in their own way. And part of it is because they're all very professional, they're all very experienced. Now, was it like being in the space? It's amazing. You just learn something new every day. And it's funny, a lot of the times we'll go to events and we'll be at a conference or a pitch event, an investor pitch event, and some of the people will come up and say, well, I don't really understand this. You know, I like your pitch, but some of the words coming out of your mouth, I did not understand. And I tell them, listen, don't let anybody make you feel dumb in the space, because everyone you talk to here at some point had no idea what any of this was. It might have been 2 years ago they just learned it. Might have been 5 years ago they were learning this. But I guarantee you, about nobody that you will talk to in this space is an expert. And if they say they're an expert, run away, because it's something new every day. And it's changing very, very fast. You look at the growth curve and the growth cycle for let's say the internet, the World Wide Web as we know it in the 90s, and things which took about 10, 12 years to kind of ramp up and grow and catch on, and then, you know, sort of drop a little bit, have a dip, and then have a bounce and stabilize after the dot-com bubble. We're seeing the same mirror image of that, but in a much, much, much faster and compressed time frame. The whole internet craze, I guess you could say, and growth and establishment of the internet as we know it took about 10 years. The modern incarnation. Of course, you had the government-sponsored one for 20 years before that, but what we consider the usable internet took about 10 years, right? We're seeing the development of blockchain in the real world in 18 months, 24 months. The whole ICO craze was from start to finish, thankfully, and it had to be finished. I'm a firm believer that the ICO thing had to crash and burn for the real serious players such as ourselves to come in and actually take advantage and develop something there. But that took 18 months from start to finish. So everything is moving much, much faster. Things that we were talking about internally here 2-3 months ago already happened, and it's already old news in some ways.
Right.
So it's a much more dynamic, fast-paced world. So it's fun.
So tell me, so what is on the agenda right now? What are you guys building? Can you share a little about what you might be doing for a specific client or something that you have on the radar that you're trying to implement right now?
Well, Alex is sort of taking the lead in that space, and we do have several clients that we're in the process of onboarding right now. But Alex, do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a precise execution plan for 2019 and 20. So we've looked back in 2018, we went after every single industry that you can imagine of. But then we realized we probably want to be experts in one vertical, and that would be particularly real estate, because real estate already knows how to do the fractional ownership in the space, but yet they need much more robust and streamlined process of unloading their real estate positions, those that have them, in the hands of a future generation of investors that perhaps don't have millions of dollars in their discretion, but rather have some discretionary funds that they would like to be participating in offer through the tokenized version of fundraise. So that is vertical that I think we're going to be very, very, very successful. because our very first customer, Oxygen Hospitality Group, had experienced a great success of us doing the tokenized short-term note. They've purchased a hotel out of California, Palm Springs, California, for $11 million. Now they're wrapping it up in a Reg A Plus and offering both local or domestic, I should say, and international players or investors to participate in two of their hotels that they're about to onboard. Actually, one already been onboarded in Phoenix, Arizona, with plans to onboard another hotel by end of May of this year, I believe.
Excellent.
So precisely on the execution, so real estate, that's the market that we're going after. From the technology standpoint, I think the tech has been built. We're just improving upon. We are making the user experience more and more robust, if you will, adding additional features or functionalities. One cool thing that we want to add would be the market makings or financial products or features, if you will, such as options, earnouts, swaps, and things of that nature that can make up ability for those that may experience the interest in an offer but not necessarily have enough cash now. So as we all know how the options work, within a certain period of time they can execute an option. So these are the additional features that we are building on top of what is existed within our platform.
That's excellent, excellent. And so now when you're talking about real estate, you're talking about both equity, right? Just investing in the equity of the real estate, but you were also mentioning, I think, time sharing, basically. Is that also a component of it?
The time sharing, not necessarily as maybe all of us presently understand the timeshare application of things, but it's more of the fractional ownership of the equity, yes, as well as the debt, any types of debts that you can imagine, both the short term and the long term. But the cool thing about it is we have ability to merge the domestic markets with the international. So, and I think a lot of international players do want to have assets to be owned here in the United States, but they have restrictions of how much money they can wire out of their respectful countries. So the blockchain and a distributed ledger of things can solve that potential problem, and that's what we are now exploring more and more and more.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so now take this a little bit bigger picture. Obviously you guys can't be the only solution out there. There's going to be others that come up and are doing some similar things. How does this technology allow you to interoperate with other similarly applied applications of blockchain, but different? That might be built on a different code base or just using a different architecture, maybe a different type of DLT. How do you guys evolve in this ever-changing world of blockchain?
Yeah, that's another very, very good question. So, and I think the next step for those that are in this space is a natural question. Okay, how would the interoperability play the role where you operate, let's say, on Stellar, someone operates on Ethereum, another one is in a Hyperledger, R3, or things of that nature. So I don't have a clear answer to that, to be honest with you, but we all work towards that. And we have a collaborative effort that one day there should be a universal protocol, if you will, to have securities tokens to be issued on that protocol. We are cognitive of the fact that everybody would want to pull the blanket on their side and say they're the first, they're the best, and but yet the ecosystem would have to be created. And I think, like in the days of internet, gosh, how many years ago was it? So about 20 or so years. Right. The attempt to do that was virtually impossible. But now, fast forward, so everything seems like streamlined. I think a similar path, but faster path, would occur in a DLT and the blockchain space. We just have to work together. because the market is so big, there's no reason for us to feel that we are competitors, but rather we are frenemies in the ways to going after the same markets, but there's no reason for us to not to collaborate to help each other, because at the end of the day, it's going to only help everybody.
Right. So if you guys are making recommendations of standards to, say, governing bodies, whether that's a government entity or the board of a nonprofit or a for-profit company for that matter, what would you say to them now in terms of, one, you want to pitch your company's solution, but also what are sort of the underlying fundamentals of your solution that you would say, well, if you're not going to use us, at least use this?
Sure. Actually, as you probably aware of, because you're very much integrated in that space, lawmakers think very differently than technologists or entrepreneurs. So everything in their mind is red flag, right? And before you pass that, you know that, wow, I wish I never gone through this process with them, right? So what we effectively realizing that that is probably the case, and the legal language would probably be the entry point. We started to work with state of Delaware on planting the seed on them getting familiar with a tokenized version of the shares or the tokenized version of the stock. And effectively, by working through our legal team, Greenberg and the state of Delaware, we had accomplished a very cool consensus where state of Delaware approved the version of a legal document of our own offer, where it's a binary offer. So it's a Class A, Class B. Class A represents the traditional shares, and Class B represents the tokens. And they're interchangeable without triggering any taxable event. What does it do with the regulators? A, it makes them feel that we're not changing necessarily anything 180 degrees, but rather applying a new technology to something that been existed for a long time. But also what it does, it makes them more comfortable in adoption process of their thinking on this new notion of a technology, DLT, because they have no idea what is DLT or how to eat it, right? But by converting the conversations from more of a, oh, this is the future, this is how it should be, this is how it will be, rather taking it one step like a crawl, walk, run approach and saying, wait a minute, let's not change anything, but just simply improve, right?
Right.
Let's just simply take this paper notion to more of a digital notion. And from digital notion to something that maybe treated differently than the securities market have known so far. That's how we've been doing the approach and working with the regulators.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I think that really outlines it. It's you've got to find the way to align what you're doing with what they know and understand. And once you're there, there's a lot of progress that can be made. And it flies right in the face of what a lot of the technologists believe, that they've invented something completely new. And while they figured out a new way to do things, it doesn't mean that what they're doing is completely new. It just means they found a new form of paper, a new form of ink, a new form of agreement, and made those tools more accessible to a broader audience. That's the other thing that the technology has done. And so now you have more people with the tool available. That means more people need to learn how to use the tool so they don't drop the hammer on their toe.
Right, because the legacy systems that they've been operating on we're probably not going to go away immediately. So it's going to take some time for someone to say, you know what, wow, for a process that takes us maybe 3-4 hours, there is a technology that can take it to 30 minutes. Why not adopting it? And then for something that we do in 30 minutes, now the technology can do in 10 minutes. Why not, right? So I think it's just a matter of adoption, but we all know not to throw the stones in someone's yard, but it's not the best interest for someone sitting there.
Right.
I wouldn't say where, and attempting to learn new things just because it's cool, right? So they have many other things to worry about or deal with, and it seems like that's not their priority. So us as a community of entrepreneurs and technologists would have to push it through, but not too much because it can burst.
Right, right. Well, and that brings us to kind of the final subject I want to hit on here is this RFI in Vermont right now. I think I might have talked to you guys about this already, but there's a request for information out from the Secretary of State to generate a report that they're basically just looking for information right now, right? There's no money on the table, no opportunity there yet, but a request for information in order to guide the state on how to approach requesting a proposal or a quote on a blockchain-based business registry right now isolated to the captive insurance industry. So it's creating a very specific sort of bubble of a use case to sandbox the concept and pilot a business registry solution in the state of Vermont. And what they're looking for right now is basically suggestions like you might make as to what they need to consider important in order to see why perhaps your solution is the best solution or a solution like yours.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd like to take a peek at the RFI and see if we can make any comments and or suggestions and participate in shaping the future of the lawmaking. So absolutely. So happy to take a look at it.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's actually, it was due today, but it's been postponed, luckily. So we have until March 7th. They make these things pretty short notice sometimes because usually the people that are participating on them are well aware of them as they come out. But that's kind of another interesting component to this is that right now we're in this space where, one, there's some blockchain opportunities with governments coming out in RFIs and RFPs even. And a lot of the people that are paying attention to those don't necessarily have the resources or know, like they don't have the expertise in-house, right? A lot of the blockchain expertise is out there in these blockchain companies who don't know how and where to look for these opportunities and how to respond to them effectively. And so, again, it's sort of that like trying to connect the legacy system to the new systems and bring those people together. In fact, there's even some blockchain developers I've been talking to that are working on how do we make that bid process and response process more streamlined and interconnect the resources with it more effectively. So there's a lot of opportunity coming up, and there's a lot of things out there that don't specify blockchain that if we know what we're looking for, we can find some very interesting use cases that we could implement things today. So it's exciting stuff going on out there. Ben, are you fielding any of this kind of interest or pursuing any of these kinds of opportunities right now?
Yeah. It's this seems to be where everything ends up culminating eventually with the real estate plays that Alex is talking about, with even now the talks we're having with local municipal government just around where we're headquartered here in Scottsdale. The city is very cooperative. After Mark and I just had a lunch with them this last week, kind of bringing up the groundwork to be laid out here to be able to approach things differently, like this Vermont RFI is proposing. And it's very fun because every time we get down this topic, Mark always brings up the municipal bond end game with this. We're very close with the guys who did that out in Berkeley, so that we can draw on all sorts of different expertise when there's actually a demand for this, when the education finally reaches critical mass where people start pulling the trigger. Once the government has no choice but to act on, well, I hesitate to call it the will of the people, but that's really what it is, I guess. So maybe I don't hesitate as much as I thought.
Yeah. Well, I like to say that's the basis of democracy, right? Expressing the will of the people. And yet we have all these systems in place because historically we haven't actually had the tools to accurately and verifiably assess the will of the people. And so what we're slowly implementing here are the tools to be able to accurately assess that and validate it, know that it's authentic, and pass that will on into a public domain where it needs to be acted on. And that's the exciting thing about this that gets people really interested as they start to understand blockchain, but it's also hard for them to put their finger on. They can't quite always articulate what it is that's so exciting. They just sense it, feel it. So I do want to wrap this up because when they're too long, people just don't watch them. But we want to keep the audience engaged. But I want to hit one last piece here, and any or all of you guys can give this a little bit of a response. But a lot of the times when I'm talking about blockchain, I get people that come back and they go, you know, it sounds great, but what's the real problem we're fixing? I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it seems like our system works pretty well, right? We've got, you know, our credit cards work, and, you know, we've got a stock market, and all these things seem to work pretty well. What do you say to that? What do you say to the public that says, well, it seems okay today. What are we really trying to fix?
That might be a loaded question to end this on, because that can go many different ways, right? You know, I think the
So
main
let's
thing.
have each of you try to give me 60 to 90 seconds. You're on the spot.
Sure. I'll give you mine. I'll even try and cut it below that. I challenge people a little bit when they say things like that. Is how I kind of go about it, because they simply don't understand dynamics. They don't understand measures of statistics. They don't understand what graphs are showing them. Even some of these really basic skills of interpretation and critical thinking are missing. And it's a really big problem. I mean, bigger than we can solve with just providing good solutions. Our critical thinking caps are on already. So there's this gap between saying, all right, let's investigate what truly is wrong with the way markets are. Can you trust it? Trust is what's being injected into it, right? That's why we all claim this new moniker, the trustless system that we're all building toward, where it's so foolproof you don't have to trust the system because it's completely trustworthy. And I think that's the trust protocol. And so that's the thing. If you ask people, do you really trust it? You're comfortable with it, but that's a way different thing from trusting the thing you're engaged with, isn't it?
Right.
And then let's pick apart why that trust exists. What's your intuition really telling you? So that's kind of where I start the common ground, and the conversation goes out from there. It's a large topic for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Phil?
Two areas, and they both have underlying criteria and factors. We discussed this a little bit earlier last time we spoke about real estate. You know, I was a member of the real estate organization in law school, and so real estate was always sort of near and dear to my heart, just because I think it's interesting. But it is such an outdated, archaic system that is just so ready to be put onto a distributed ledger and put onto the blockchain. It would just make life so much easier for everybody involved, and it would compress you know, what is traditionally a 30 or 60 or 90-day closing time on a piece of real estate, on a property. You could do it in a few weeks, maybe even a week, where you have all parties having easy, clear, immutable, accurate, accessible information at their fingertips. It just obviates almost the entire process and rigmarole of closing. And that leads to the fractionalization of real estate assets, which I think will open up the opportunity for a lot of investors that otherwise would not have the ability to park $1 million, $2 million, $5 million at a time in a real estate project. You can now fractionalize those projects down to where you can have someone with $50,000, $100,000 that can afford to invest in that project. And what that gives us then is A, more liquidity, B, access to untapped capital from the investors. And if you have greater liquidity, greater number of investors, you are going to have more pricing transparency and pricing accuracy and insight into the true value of an investment. And that will all feed into each other and attract more investors, and also allow issuers to have a more successful capital raise, or have an easier time pricing and valuing their property. And again, the last point is, if you're able to remove that illiquidity that's present in a lot of these markets, and investors know that they can get in and out more easily long term of an investment, they're more willing to invest in it. You're removing one parcel of the risk, one part of the risk. If there's less risk and they're more willing to invest, it means that the issuer, whether it's for a piece of real estate, for a private placement, for fine art or collectible art, which is another conversation we can have. They are then able to more easily market and sell, or market and distribute those shares, and they can more easily raise the capital and get a better valuation on the capital. So I think there's a lot of untapped value in a lot of these markets that friction and these burdens and these hurdles are stifling. So I think we could actually see a boom, an economic boom, once this all gets rolling. So I think I'm optimistic. I think that's what we're going to see in the next few years. So.
Awesome. Awesome. I like it. An economic boom lying in wait for us to recognize its value. Beautiful. All right, Alex. I'm sure they've all taken the words right out of your mouth. So the hardest wrap up is to you. What is your answer to the folks that say, but why do we need it? Life's so good already anyways.
Yeah. On this type of a question, I ask another question. And to simply put, I say, what kind of car are you driving? They typically say, well, this and that. Why didn't you bring a horse with you? Well, I never rode a horse. And that is exactly the point. It's evolution, right? So you didn't even think about, because there were days when people were riding the horses and donkeys, but now we're riding the cars. And if you want to see your mama in Florida and you live in California, what would you going to do? You're probably going to take an airplane. And in case you want to research something, would you go to a public library and start to search for the book that you want to, or encyclopedia to find in that public library, or you're going to go on the internet? Well, these are the things that obviously telling me that either a person asking this question is ignorant, or B, is delusional in the fact that the evolution process of things that we deal with is so evident. And to me, it's loud and clear that the blockchain and distributed ledger technology, perhaps of how we operate, at least in the capital markets, is the next evolution of streamlining and make things easy for everybody.
Yeah.
So,
well, you had a really good analogy there with the library too, because I think that's what people don't realize is, while we do everything digitally, our financial systems still operate like our libraries.
Exactly.
And that's what they just don't see. But just because they don't see it on the surface doesn't mean it doesn't cause harm and obfuscation and risk in our system. And then the other piece of it is, we have to think about more than ourselves, right? It's not just about us and everything seems to work fine for us, because most of the world, it doesn't work fine.
Correct. Yep.
So we have to take care of humanity, not just, oh, well, our life's okay.
We all have that piece of responsibility too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I love that perspective on it, Alex. We definitely we owe it to each other to bring up our level of awareness and take advantage of the tools that are out here. And for those that aren't ready, it just takes those of us that are to hop on the bike and show them how fun it is, and then reach out a hand, right?
Ryan, absolutely. Thank you for inviting us again, and looking forward to have more conversations with you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for going off air. Thank you for joining us. This is Interchain Live and Ryan Munn. We've had TokenIQ. Have a wonderful day.